Malignaggi here for Paulie TV. Welcome back. You know what? International Women's Month. It's a great time to be discussing women's pound-for-pound list. It's a lot of good women fighters in boxing, and overall in combat sports in general. You know, MMA also has some very good female fighters. I've sort of been able to watch the evolution of women's boxing, because women's boxing, I remember in New York, in the amateur system, the women were first allowed to compete in the New York Golden Gloves in 1995. So not that long ago when you really think about it, you know, in 1995. And they were able to start their, you know, getting their show on the road. And, you know, you had the women's national Golden Gloves, you had the New York Golden Gloves and the women's national Golden Gloves and so on and so forth. And women's boxing kind of started to take shape and sort of rise on from there, you know. Not that long after, Layla Ali came into the pros and really sparked things a bit more and gained more interest. Chrissy Martin was doing her thing. She was probably the main pioneer, I think. You know, she got on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I can remember her on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So that really was a big eyeball getter, so to speak, you know. But I think today we're in, if I speak from my personal opinion, I think we're in the best generation of female fighters to date, you know. And I think it's sort of normal. The sport kind of advances. You know, I think the early stages of any combat sport are primitive. You know, I can remember the early MMA days with the early UFC tournaments compared to MMA fighters now. They're much more advanced. They're multi-skilled and multiversed in a lot of ways, the different dimensions, both with their ground game and their stand-up game. And even boxing, although boxing historians are a little bit nerdy in that way. They kind of get, you know, attached to their guys from 150 years ago and they make like they would beat anybody at all today, which they wouldn't. But, you know, those guys still have to be appreciated nonetheless for the fact that they were pioneers to set up the sport. And that's kind of how I see the early women fighters as well. I don't think they're as good as today's fighters, but they have to be appreciated because of the fact they were the pioneers and the trailblazers for what women's boxing has become today. And I think today we have a terrific generation of female fighters that are exciting, fighters that we want to see in the ring, fighters that we look forward to watching. They make good fights, they make fun fights, some personalities as well. I remember Layla was a real personality like her father. And even today, you know, somebody like Claressa Shields like to talk a lot of trash, and also, you know, she's a terrific female fighter. But you know, the debate is always, just as the males, you know, what is your pound-for-pound list? What's your pound-for-pound list of female fighters? And of course, the lists are always debated. I'm personally not a fan of pound-for-pound lists, honestly, but I do them because they generate attention and people will talk about the opinions and agree or disagree. And many times there's a lot of disagreements over what order they're in. But for me, you know, in this generation of that, again, I'll say it again, the best female fighters in the history of the sport of female boxing, I've got my list. And I want to know what you guys think, but my list, I'm going to give you my top 5. It's a little bit tough though, to my top 5, because I'll be honest, I came up with 6 because I couldn't come up with 5, so I got like a tie at number 5. So I kind of cheated, you know? Fine. I kind of cheated on that one. But I couldn't figure it out really, because okay, so let's just get into it and then I'll explain it. All right, my number 5 is kind of 2 people. It's Delfine Parsoon and Amanda Serrano tie.
And this is current?
Current.
Yeah, current.
Right now, right this second, Paulie Malignaggi's female pound-for-pound list, number 5 are Parsoon and Serrano. Granted, they could fight each other, but, you know, Serrano obviously is going to fight the Katie Taylor fight, but I think a matchup with these two would also be a really, really good fight. I think they're both very good fighters. I couldn't tell them apart. As far as where I ranked them, I thought Parsoon beat Katie Taylor and got robbed, at least the first time she fought her. So, you know, she definitely deserves her respect and deserves to, you know, get the credit she deserves and probably even more. You know, she probably could have been a world champion had she gotten the decision that I felt she deserved against Katie Taylor. Serrano has been a world champion in many different weight classes. I think it's something like 6 or 7 weight classes. She just hasn't been able to get the kind of opponent that makes her memorable. A lot of times fighters have this problem where they're so good and they end up, not being able to attract the opponents that people will remember them for. For every Muhammad Ali, there needs to be a Joe Frazier, right? So I feel like Serrano sort of is underappreciated a lot of times because she hasn't been able to draw in that kind of opponent. I feel like Serrano, honestly, was better a few years ago. I mean, there was a time where Serrano, for me, was possibly the best female fighter on the planet, pound for pound. But right now, I feel like based on her recent performances, I don't know if it's a lack of excitement on her part because she hasn't been able to lock in those kind of opponents that she wanted or whatnot. I feel like she's regressed a little bit, but she's still top tier. And, having all these world championships on her resume makes her obviously top tier and on the pound for pound list. I'd love to see her against Parsoon, but we have her against Katie Taylor, which is obviously an even better fight since Taylor is the champion and the more notable fighter. And also, I felt like Taylor did her job and beat Parsoon in the rematch in a fight that I felt that she did win in the rematch. So either way, Taylor is there. So we get Serrano against Katie Taylor. And I'm hoping that for the sake of Amanda Serrano, I'm hoping that maybe the subpar showings she's shown of late have just been a matter of her just not really being into it because she's so much better than these opponents and she hasn't really been on her dotting her I's and crossing her T's in there, and she's just kind of just beating them on pressure and activity. Because with Katie Taylor, you're gonna have to be good. She's gonna have to be the Amanda Serrano she was before. So I'm hoping we get that Amanda Serrano, because if we get that Amanda Serrano, then Taylor and Serrano is gonna be some fight. It's designed to be some fight. But I'm hoping that that Serrano is the Serrano that she's been in the last few years. Personally, I think if she had been looking that way, I don't think Eddie Hearn would have made the fight. I think Eddie Hearn was ducking that fight for Katie Taylor for a while. And so the fact that he's making it now, to me, makes me start to think maybe he's starting to see Serrano slip like I've started to notice Serrano slip. But again, I'm hoping it's just the fact that Serrano is maybe unmotivated, which means if that's all that was the case, then with Katie Taylor, she'll get back and be motivated and make it fun. But for now, my number 5 is 5A and 5B. It's Parsoon and Serrano. My number 4 female fighter on the pound for pound list, on my female pound for pound list, is Claressa Shields. She's been dominant. She's been terrific. She's been great. I don't think she barely loses even that many rounds, no matter who she fights. Yes, a lot of people have her number 1 on their pound for pound list. I'm not going to disagree or argue, but on my pound for pound list, she's number 4. Again, I feel like she needs, again, like I said before, the same example. Every Ali needs a Joe Frazier, right? Every Muhammad Ali needs a Joe Frazier. And it could just be that Claressa Shields is just so good, she's not going to get a Joe Frazier. It could just be that, because there's been women that they've been trying to hype up that they put in with Claressa Shields, and then they ended up not being of that level. Who was that girl? Hammer? Was it Christina Hammer? Was it
the UFC fight?
No. Forget the UFC fight. I'm not even counting that. The fight where Shields was, they were building up this chick, and then this girl, and then Shields just washed her. Shields washed her easily, So, and that's why Claressa ended up going to MMA, because she went to PFL, actually, not UFC. She went to MMA because she couldn't find any competition that was worthy of her in boxing. She's been so dominant, and she went to MMA. But she's just signed a contract with Boxer over in the UK. Female fighting in the UK is very popular. Savannah Marshall is signed to Boxer as well, Boxer Promotions. So I think we could possibly get a terrific matchup with an opponent that, again, is being hyped up for Claressa in a way where she can be that, have that chance to have that Joe Frazier-esque type of opponent.
She just, her last two fights were against undefeated champions. So
no, I know, yeah. I know. They're there. It's just they're not that good for her, at least in terms of competing with her. And again, this could be this is the problem, that she might be that good. She is that good, but
and she's only 26.
But yeah, but the issue is still remains what it was, and that is that she doesn't have somebody that has pushed her to that limit, and sometimes people like that can get underappreciated because they're so dominant that they don't have that foil of an opponent, you know. But Savannah Marshall possibly is someone that, you know, could bring that up. Savannah Marshall has given Claressa Shields the only defeat of her career. Claressa only lost once in the amateurs. She won 2 gold medals in the Olympics. She had 1 amateur loss, and it was to Savannah Marshall. So Savannah Marshall has now made her way up the rankings, and they're on the verge of fighting one another. Again, they're both signed to Boxer. I think this fight would be huge, probably in the UK, where, you know, it would probably sell more tickets. And Savannah Marshall also has a good amount of popularity. And I think that's why Boxer made the smart decision to sign them both, so they could have this matchup right on their lap and be able to promote it, build it up, and then obviously make the fight. I believe it's going to happen next. So Savannah's a big super middleweight. I don't know. From what I've seen from Savannah, listen, Savannah's impressive, but she's a little loopy with her shots, you know. Just doesn't come off to me as sharp as Claressa, and for that reason, I'm thinking, I'm hoping that it becomes a good fight, and I'm hoping that it doesn't become another one of those fights where they have a hyped up opponent for Claressa who's supposed to test her and then isn't able to test her at all. You know, I'm hoping it's for the sake of, you know, wanting to see a good fight. Obviously, you have to give Claressa respect if she's able to dominate Savannah Marshall as well. But let's not forget, this is the only woman that has beaten Claressa Shields in the past. But right now, my number 4 fighter on the female pound for pound list is Claressa Shields. Number 3 on the pound for pound list, Jessica McCaskill. McCaskill has been really terrific. She beat the woman who was probably considered number 1 by many people, Cecilia Brækhus, and beat her very good in a very good fashion. And McCaskill has been in there with Katie Taylor, lost a good fight to Katie Taylor. The reason I put her at 3 is because she's had these kind of foils. She's had the people that really test her. She's been able to fight them, even beat them, and obviously also lost to Katie Taylor. But she's in there, and she's in a situation where she's good, but there's also some excellent fighters in and around her weight class that really have pushed her. But she's been able to excel, become dominant, and she's one of the best fighters in the world. Some people may also have her as number 1 on their pound-for-pound list. For me, she's number 3, and a terrific female fighter. I saw her fight in December on the Devin Haney card against Jojo Diaz. She had another dominant win. So with McCaskill, you know, maybe she'll get the winner of Taylor and Serrano. Who knows? You know, that's being discussed. She's certainly a terrific fighter, but a little three-way rivalry could develop there because Serrano has been waiting for a shot that she hasn't gotten. If Serrano can raise her game again to where I have seen it in the past, I believe Serrano may be able to even beat Taylor. But right now, the way it looks in this moment, what I've seen from Serrano and Taylor of late, I probably would pick Taylor to win that fight. But nonetheless, we get a chance to hope for the winner to go in there against Jessica McCaskill. And that's my number 3 fighter on the female pound for pound list is Jessica McCaskill. Number 2 on the female pound for pound list. Who do you guys think it is? Katie Taylor for me. Katie Taylor is my number 2 fighter on the female pound for pound list. She's been terrific. She's been dominant. I do feel she lost the first fight to Delfine Parsoon, but she came back like a warrior. And even if she got the decision in the Parsoon fight, in the rematch, I felt like she did enough to win the fight, made her adjustments, and beat Parsoon. I still think it's a shame Parsoon doesn't get a credit for the win that I felt she deserved. But Katie Taylor really showed her the character that she has in going back to the drawing board, making the adjustments, working hard. She's a world-class fighter regardless, but now she made world-class adjustments and was able to beat Parsoon. And for me, that was a very important win for her. She's getting ready, obviously, as we've talked about, for the Serrano fight. And the Serrano fight has been one that's been talked about for a while. I probably edge it to her right now, the way they've both been looking of late. But it's a fight where, you know, if Serrano gets motivated the way I've seen her in the past, the way she starts fighting the way I've seen her fight in the past, you know, I could see an upset there. But right now, based on recent run of form, I pick Katie Taylor over Serrano. And right now, she's my number 2 fighter on the female pound-for-pound list.
This fight seems like the most hyped female boxing match of all time, right?
It's been pretty hyped up. I mean, Layla Ali versus Jackie Frazier Lied was pretty hyped up as well. I don't know, like 20 years ago, because it was the daughters of Ali and Frazier. That was a pretty big hyped up fight. But I feel like, honestly, Taylor and Serrano's happening too late. I feel like it's a little bit Mayweather Pacquiao-esque. You know, I can't get as excited about it as everybody else might be. But I'm hoping that I'm wrong. You know, I think if we would have got Serrano at her best, her and Taylor would have been an even better fight. Listen, as far as the fact that female boxing is growing in popularity and the fighters are getting better and better, I think it's a great fight to make. I just would have rather seen it a year or two earlier, or at least 2 years earlier, actually. But I think Eddie Hearn has played it very, very, very cleverly, in that he's been able to wait it out. And now I feel like Taylor has been looking much better than Serrano has of late. I feel like Serrano has sort of dipped in her performance levels. And I feel like that's the reason why Hearn made the fight. Listen, could it be that Serrano has suckered Hearn in, and in reality, Serrano can get motivated and start looking the way she looked before? Possible, you know? Maybe that was the only way she was going to get the Taylor fight. But I am of the feeling that if Serrano looked as dominant as she had in years past, I don't think Eddie Hearn would have made this fight with Katie Taylor. I really don't. But right now, we have it made, and it's a fight we still have to look forward to. It's a great fight between two female champions who have terrific, stellar resumes. And April 30th, that should be a great fight. But Katie Taylor is my number 2 female fighter on the pound-for-pound list. So who's number 1? Who do you guys think is number 1? I gave you 4 good fighters, but I left one out. I left my number 1 out. I don't know what you guys think. I don't know what your number 1 is, and I want to hear your comments down below. Let me know how my list shapes up to yours, because my number 1 female fighter in the world is super bad Seniesa Estrada. She's had the rivalry with Marlon Esparza. She's also had the flash performances, power, a sparkling KO in her dynamic KO in her last fight. She fights brilliantly out of both stances, the southpaw stance and the right-handed stance, which shows you different dimensions to her style that I feel like I haven't seen out of other female fighters. And she's exciting. She's personable. She's got a little bit of personality. She's got a bit of a crossover appeal. For me, she's a great representation for female boxing. And the most important thing, aside from the crossover stuff, she can actually fight. She can fight. And I've gone into it with fighting out of 2 stances, showing some good power. And again, she's had the rivalry with Esparza, which who knows? We might see that fight again. So she has her Ali Frazier type rival. She has her performances where she can sparkle and dazzle out of both stances. She has shown some KO power, dynamic KO power, 1-punch KO in the last fight she had. And
that 7-second knockout.
Yeah, that 7-second knockout. Yeah, but that was harsh. That was harsh. But you got to do what you got to do. The bell rings. Well, no matter what your opponent, no matter what level your opponent's on, you got to go for them and have that killer instinct.
Knockout in women's boxing history.
Fastest knockout in women's boxing history. So that's another check mark for her. 27 years old. She came up fighting. She's been boxing since she's a kid, and that's the thing about this new generation of female fighters is, a lot of the original female fighters, they were starting to box already as adults, so that you could tell it looked a little awkward for them. You know, when you start boxing late, even the guys can admit this. There's a little bit of awkwardness to the way you take to certain reactions and the way your mind is rehearsed to react to certain things. Where when you grew up boxing since you're a kid, it almost comes smoothly and naturally, And Seniesa's been boxing since she's a kid, as I think probably many of these top female fighters have today. I know Claressa has for sure as well. You can tell it comes very natural for her too. So this is another thing with why this current crop of female fighters is the best that I've ever seen, and probably the best ever in the history of the sport of female boxing. They've been boxing since they're kids. They've got your 100 amateur fight experience like the guys get. And when you get that, you get fighters like you have on my pound-for-pound list. So that's my top 5 female pound-for-pound fighters of this generation right now at this moment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what kind of list you have. Don't kill me if you disagree. Just disagree. Be nice. It's very hard to agree on what order the fighters should be on. Maybe I forgot somebody on the top 5 that you feel should be on the top 5. Let me know. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Paulie TV.